This morning we are having a press conference to look at our report, and I'm not going to do anything else except introduce to you the chairperson of the commission, my friend, Brother Dlp. Over to you, brother.
Good morning to all of our viewers. Good morning, Barbados. I too will keep it short on this leg, and that is to say thank you to the leader of the opposition for giving me the opportunity to chair the Democratic Labour Party's Commission on Crime. This was set up in July of last year, and the report was completed in March of this year. Then there was a steep learning curve as to what actually goes into the production of a book and the editing process, the graphics process, the binding process. However, what I did do once I received it from that element is that I updated it. So it is current to July of 2025. And it is my pleasure on behalf of the commission, the 12 commissioners, to present this morning a copy, the very first copy of the report, which you can see on the table and you can also see here. This book I present to the leader of the opposition, and I thank him for the opportunity to be a part of what hopefully is a transformation exercise for Barbados. There's no need to wax lyrical about what we are going through right now as a nation in terms of the very disruptive elements and the capacity that it has to affect everybody, whether it is personally or whether it is anecdotally. The feeling on the ground is definitely that we need to do something transformative. And so it is a very comprehensive document. It's almost 200 pages, but we also have an executive summary so that there can be instant referencing, and hopefully the country is appreciative of the efforts of the commission. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, I will speak later, but first I want the leader of the opposition to speak to his vision in relation to this document, and then we can have a word about the content before we take your questions from the media.
Thank you, Verla. As to vision, before we get there, let me express deepest gratitude to you and to all of the commissioners for responding immediately last year. I could not let this moment pass unless I give credit where credit is due. Sometime last year, when crime was raging in Barbados, as it is now, Mr. Hainsley Bang telephoned me and said, look, you have to establish a commission on crime. We cannot let this crime rampage unless we give the citizens of Barbados an opportunity to say how they feel about crime, to establish ourselves as a commission and to examine crime and to come up with recommendations. All this was happening before the government thought of establishing their own, I think it's called a council, an advisory council to the government on crime. And as we know, that has seen some collapse at the very top, but we're not concerned about the government's council. We're more concerned about the fact that we owe you, Verla, and your commission a debt of gratitude for the commitment, for the work that you've done, for the town hall commissions. This was a genuinely organic exercise in which you met the citizens of Barbados, engaged with them, and that consultation obviously led to the proposals that would be contained in your report. So we really, at the Democratic Labour Party, ex, express deepest gratitude to you for this work. And I don't know if I can say anything as to vision at this point, but I want to read the report. I want to read the report. But to give Barbadians the assurance that this party is working, and that this party is working in the interest of Barbadians, this party is working with Barbadians. So we are going to invite the various interest groups, the public. We have to do some more printing next week. I think we have a few printed thus far. Obviously, we make them available to the media. But the vision is that Barbados should return to the Barbados that we knew. This country cannot endure this period of crime. And if this country endures this period of crime uninterrupted, it will cease to be the country that we knew. There are young people in this country, 15 years old, who knew a different Barbados. This upsurge and this nature of violence it's fairly recent. We did not know of young men riding around with high-powered rifles on motorcycles unimpeded and unimpeded by the authorities who in many cases are absent. But that is a situation that we have to deal with. Our vision as a party is that this country must return to a place of peace. We will not have a good economy. We will not have a well-ordered society while we have this level of crime. And that will be one of the Democratic Labour Party's major manifesto promises, that we will attend to crime, that we will respect the police service, that we will respect the customs, and that we will respect the Barbados Defence Force. That is that is to encapsulate the vision of this party in relation to crime. We have to fight crime. We have to beat crime. We have to fight crime legislatively. We must go to Parliament, and we must not go to Parliament and do like this government and pretend that we are passing laws. We have to pass laws which are genuinely in the interest of the prevention of crime. In terms of the police service and the Barbados Defence Force, they must and will be respected. And I have something to say very shortly about the goings on in the Barbados Police Service, the goings on in the Barbados Customs. There are very disturbing events occurring within those two bodies. And those two bodies, unless they are allowed to function with insulation from political control and influence, crime at this level will continue in this country. That is part of the vision, that those services, those public services, customs, and the Barbados Police Service must be respected. They must be returned to a status in which they guide their affairs without political interference. So that is to encapsulate the vision. Again, Perla, I thank you so much. I said last year, and I don't mind saying it again, last year on the occasion of the annual conference, this party owes you more than it will ever be able to repair. If that sounds Shakespearean, it is. But beyond Shakespeare's brilliance, I want to say to you that that is my genuine view, that you have served this party well. You continue to serve this party in whatever capacity the party asks of you. And I think you are a model citizen and a model member of this party. And I am so grateful that you have been able to pull this thing together and in short time to produce a document such as this. It is impressive. It's quite impressive, and it will make good reading for Barbadians when the time comes. So that is my brief statement for the time being. I will give you details on matters of disturbance within the Barbados Customs and within the Barbados Police Service. So I will come back to you very shortly, Derek.
Yes, I think we'll give her an opportunity to introduce some of the commissioners that are here.
Yes.
And then we will get her to give us a little preview. Because we have not read we have not read the final document. We want them all to read it and then be surprised.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're over to you.
Yes. And first, let me speak to that element of it, because Derek is one of the commissioners. So for him to say that he hasn't seen the final document does need some explanation. And it doesn't really go very far, not to disrespect any of the commissioners, but we do know from experience within the party, most recently as the last election, that leaks happen. Fortunately, last election, it was a draft document, but it doesn't really matter. So confidentiality is a major issue. And it is not about the commissioners. It is about the means of transferring the information from one person to another that allows it to be in the public domain. They did have sight of drafts of individual chapters, and I want to thank you, Derek, Maxine. I can't see behind me. Kelly, I can see you there in the camera shot.
Reverend
I,
Carter.
I have our president, Andre, next to me. Reverend Carter is here. The deputy commissioner is on his way.
Bertie.
Bertie Hines, who is phenomenal, if I may segue for a moment and speak to policing in Barbados. If you want guidance as to how policing ought to operate, not only is he an experienced police officer, but he's taken the time since retirement to commit his thoughts to writing. There are 2 books so far, and I hear through the grapevine that a 3rd one is on its way, and with current research. So it is not as though there is no information out there. The commissioners each had specialties and reported in relation to them. I missed one who is present. As the camera pans out, I'm seeing Shakoni. And you will note that we had a mixture of youth and experience. We also had a mixture of interest groups. What that allowed for was access to information. I noted with interest that the other committee set up by the government, when its chair was demitting office, she spoke of difficulty receiving information from interest groups who were actually represented in her grouping. We didn't have that as a difficulty at all. We had, I would go so far as to say, an effusiveness in terms of reaching out from interest groups. Our issue and our dilemma is in relation to, and we didn't hide it, is in the report, that the reporting from the public, we got a better response when we were one-on-one on the street, which we did. We actually went to the street to speak to regular Barbadians about what they were experiencing, about what they wanted to see, what they expected, what they noted as the deficiencies in governance in Barbados, and how that was translating and being represented by crime on the ground. And what that meant was that our online survey, for me, was undersubscribed. As I noted, though, going through other contemporary works, that is almost a practice. And I do know that when our survey was online, I was getting calls from people saying, why is this asking me for my email address? Is this going to be confidential? And people were actually having a problem with speaking their minds, even though they were reassured that that was a function of Google and not a function of ours, and we don't actually get that information coming back to us. There was still that suspicion that someone was going to be able to find out how they responded. So we actually abandoned that aspect of information gathering because we recognized that we were getting better information and a more fulsome response from people when they were assured of their confidentiality. Now, for me, that speaks to a state of mind and a state of governance in the country. If you do not feel that you can speak your mind in a public forum, that is addressed in the report as well, because you must, in a democracy, be able to speak your mind. However, having said that, I think I can speak for all of the commissioners who were involved in the on-the-ground campaign that was a fantastic experience. Just having people pour out their hearts about what they are seeing and feeling. And I will speak specifically to some of them. I obviously can't go into all, but the ones that stood out, the as we were speaking about crime and understanding that there is an issue. I mean, we start without needing to expand and expound on that because we live in this society. But then to hear what are the triggers for people on the ground, they speak about that infamous telephone call in Deacons. That was a refrain on the ground, as in the minds of Barbadians, there is the perception that that was a signal moment in the history of this country in terms of the exponential growth of crime. That perception is on the street, and that has to be dealt with frontally if it is that we are going to make any significant strides going forward. That is spoken to in the report. They spoke about, and there's an entire chapter called The Untouchables, because there is a feeling that there is a segment of society that is insulated from any repercussions from crime. And they speak to political examples, they speak to social examples. There is that impression, and it is not just a political factor, but it is an economic driver. Also, there is a recognition on the ground that there is a connection between the economy and the society. Now, the Democratic Labour Party has been pilloried for saying that we are more, I beg your pardon, more than economy, that we are a society. But that is actually a trigger on the ground, that there is this feeling that in paying so much attention to our economic heartbeat, you know, we're watching the graph in relation to our economics, but we are not recognizing that there's a converse reaction socially. And the access to social care, there is a note on the ground that the things that we used to take for granted as provisioned not by the state but provisioned by our taxes are now being paid for. We're paying the taxes on it, but we're also paying a health levy, we're paying at the pump. You know, it is as though there's this frustration that's building up that you're being burdened by the state. And then there's this pushback. But for certain, when we got on the ground, we got information that we never would have received had we remained in the boardroom. And I will say that having Lumumba on the commission was a door opener, because we got all the way. We weren't just on Broad Street, we were in Subtle Street and Nelson Street and getting our information. We went around the country as we did our town hall meetings. Before the town hall meeting and after the town hall meeting, we went into the areas where we were cited. We also had a town hall meeting with the diaspora, because if you're having a conversation about Barbados, you have to recognize that Barbados is beyond the 166 square miles, and that those of our citizens who live outside pay very, very careful attention to what is happening in Barbados. They are also very effusive about the crime situation, and they are very much triggered by what is happening here. So this commission, whilst we recognize that we had a weakness in one area, we were able to pivot and overcompensate by reaching out directly to the people. So we have that immediate information, and then we bolstered it by actual research into what is transpiring in the academic fields in relation to the management of crime. We know that we'll never not have crime, but the intention is to reduce crime as much as possible, so that we then are into a preventative mode as opposed to a knee-jerk response mode. That means that we have to be very nimble in not just our minds, but our feet and our hands as we look to make the correct legislative changes that would allow for us to make those social development changes as well. And then as a third layer, outside of the literature review that we undertook, we also did some case studies, because crime isn't only in Barbados, and there are other countries and other cities that have been very, very successful in their management of crime. I will state openly that if the government of Barbados is serious about the management of crime, they need to not reinvent the wheel, which is another chapter in the report. They need to, they don't, if they don't want to take our word for it, that's fine. This is for the people of Barbados, which includes them. But if they're not mindful of this, then do your own research and come forward with meaningful provisioning, which is what this report does. It not only has recommendations, but it also has given a legislative framework, because at the end of the day, it will remain an academic exercise if there is no practicality to it, and there must be some application. And the way to do that is for government not to abdicate its responsibility and talk about how this is a whole of country issue. We know that it's a whole of country issue, but we want to know how the government is leading in relation to the, I hesitate to say fight against crime, because truthfully, crime is for the most part a response to something. So whilst we have to have immediate responses, we also have to have visionary proposals, so that we're dealing with the immediacy of the problem, but we're also doing our best to roll back the issues that create the environment for crime in the first place. Because let's be real, if it is that the state is not managing the social output, somebody is going to step into the breach. And we know from just looking around the region that the ones who step into that breach tend to have the criminal minds. So if it is that we are going to recapture our people, then we need to be the ones who are leading. When I say we, I mean the government. The government has to be the ones leading. And they were not off base with the setting up of a committee. That is a feature that is definite in the case studies that we looked at. But the difference is that those committees were manned by government, ministers of government. It wasn't a passing of the baton and of course, the responsibility if things fall out. And we have to be very real about these things. It is about the leadership for the country. And that has to move from those that the people have put there to lead. So government does not get to abdicate its responsibility to a committee and walk away and wait for the report. The ministers have to be there. There has to be a driver for it. It has to have that level of impact that we the citizens then are confident in our government. And that is not just a supposition on the part of the Democratic Labour Party. We actually went all the way back to Aristotle. And again, this has been the principle of governance, that a government guarantees the safety of its citizens. The citizens are giving up something in order to get back from the government an assurance that they will be, yes. So if it is that, I mean, this is, I will have to say, governance 101. And if it is that government is not up to that task, then they need to admit that and actually allow others who are prepared to take on that responsibility and shoulder that brunt, because that really is what it is, that you are accepting your responsibility. And when we say accept your responsibility for crime prevention, we mean that you set the tone, you put the legislative framework in place, and then you allow those whose mandate it is as agencies of the state to operate freely. So I wouldn't be expecting then a government that has its hand on the crime situation and has put the correct proposals in place to then feel the need to insert itself in the police force, to insert itself in the management of customs, and to insert itself in the implementation of the laws. They are, as we would say in law, Ralph, functus at the point of putting the legislation in place. So then that answers the people of Barbados who did not like the phone call, okay, because you have put something in place. And pardon me noting the comment online, we do intend to circulate electronically. We actually have that document ready, but we knew that we were, as far as we were concerned, behind time with this report. This is the first print. There will be more, right? And the layout for the electronic is almost completed. So I just segue to answer that person with that comment. But what you really need to have is that framework from government, and then the agencies have the ability to perform. Now, there's another feature of this report which even the commissioners do not know about, and this is because the editorial team spoke to this. As they read it, they were like, this is missing something, and it was costing. We're saying you need to do all of these things. Where are you going to get the money from to do them? Because you will expect that pushback. And so there's a section dealing with costing, because and I would just speak to one aspect of it, because we will hear that, oh, we don't have the money to do all of this, and we won't talk about how you got money to asphalt a whole car park up at the botanical gardens, and you can't get the road to my house finished, right? But that's a segue. But at the end of the day, it is an honest question. How are we going to pay for all of this? But you know, all of these social changes that we identify in this document that need to happen in order to divert our citizens, especially our young citizens, away from criminality, fall very, very neatly under the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, for which they provide grant funding. So we're not talking about increasing the loan burden. In the research, after the editorial team pointed out that lacuna, I also recognized that there is grant funding for NGOs, because we would know that after government sets its framework and government agencies undertake their work, that there are also some private sector agencies that are involved in transformative governance. So they too have outlets for. Exactly. And then let's face it, you have the opportunity as a government to decide what your priorities are. So if it is that your priority is the safeguarding of your citizens, you will find the money for it. Let me go all the way back to finding the money to pave a car park at the botanical gardens, okay? And that underscores that there is money available for what is the priority for government. Therefore, the challenge to government, the existing government of the day, is to make the safety of its citizens a priority. And in the event that they don't wish to spend the time to do the research, to bring policies to bear, the Democratic Labour Party has done it for you. And the Blueprint to Rescue the Nation is now a published document and will be available widely, so that they are in a position to do. I heard the Prime Minister say, oh, we're holding our report for a manifesto. There's only one person in the country for the time being who knows when an election will be called. And in the meantime, our young sons' blood runs in the street. There is no way that a responsible Democratic Labour Party government will be holding a report for an election that we do not have any control over when and if it is called. This is a critical point for this country. We thought last year reached a low point. This year we've started digging up to this report is current to the end of July. 30 young souls lost.
Plus 30 plus.
And we need to arrest that slide. And that's only talking about homicides. This report doesn't only deal with homicides, it deals with crime, okay? Generally, because you can't have just one element of crime and think that you can fix just that thing. There's a street crime element that we need to address. There's an attack on our elderly that's just driving, raising my blood pressure, and I start with a low one. It is literally a disease in society now. It actually, CARFA has indicated that crime is now a health issue. They are relating it to the pressure on the health institutions. But this report also deals with it in terms of mental health pressure, not just the pressure in terms of managing the care of those who are injured from crime. But then we still have the aspect that there is the perception of crime has people staying home. And that is unhealthy for a society as well. So all of that has to be addressed. All of that is addressed. And I will just end by saying that when the commission finished its report back in March, we concluded that we were not done. There are aspects that are not covered in this report. And it is because we were pressed for time. We recognized that the country was pressed for solutions, and we wanted to get our response out. We recognized that there was a feeling that we had done the country a disservice by not joining the Prime Minister in her own committee. We find ourselves vindicated given the very stinging critique of the outgoing chair of that body. And we also do believe that as a party, that this document sets a tone. I have to my left the current president of the party, and I have to my right the current leader of the opposition, also from the party. And the challenge to them is to recognize that more documents like this on other topics, because we deal in a glossy fashion with the role that education has to play in the crime fight. We deal in a cursory manner in the role that the court system plays in the fight against crime. We deal in very small measure with the way that the social construct deals with it, because all of these have a role to play. It is a whole of country exercise, not in the way that the Prime Minister is saying it, but that every single ministry of government has to have as a focus the prevention of crime. So this one report couldn't deal with all. And the challenge to them is to find a way to get the information in relation to the party's feeling and thinking on those other aspects fleshed out in some meaningful way. Not me though, I just want to let you know. But in all seriousness, the exercise of governance is always going to be an ongoing one. It can't be a completed document. It is a mission. And the Democratic Labour Party, I'm going to hold some licks for saying we lost our way for a little while, but we are back to make sure that the citizens of Barbados understand that there is a better way to do things, and that we are not afraid of making hard decisions and standing by them. When you read it, I can't let out everything because of time. I noticed a signal or two already, but we don't hold back on ourselves, the critique of ourselves in the report. So you would know that we don't hold back on the critique of the existing government either. And we don't hold back on the critique of society, because if there's one thing that is required in order to rescue our nation, is that we are completely honest about where we are at. We are completely honest about where we wish to be, and that we sit down and make the strides that take us down that road. Thank you. I didn't, just to say that the book doesn't contain the acknowledgements. This is a first print. We will get to, I was just being asked about the acknowledgements, but we will get to those. It's a first print, but we will, I am sure there will be a second edition, right?
Yeah.
The commission does want to continue its work. We really do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to briefly address two matters pertaining to two agencies of the state, and Verla did hint at it, the police and customs. And I feel vindicated and relieved at Verla's statement that within the public domain, there was anxiety and concern about the infamous telephone call made on that bad Friday, which used to be Good Friday. And that is not mere folklore. That is something that we're instructed actually happened in Barbados.
Mhm.
And it was the mark of the undermining of the authority of these agencies of state, and in particular, the police service. Now, I want to say something about the police service and government's relationship with the police service, and I'm going to be specific here. Sometime around budget debate last year, March 2024, the government made a promise to the Barbados Police Service that they would create this new designation, new post, new rank of senior constable. We were not satisfied with this new rank because we think it is patronizing. We've always argued that the police service needs to be modernized in the form of a proper Republican state. We've always said that police are underpaid, and we have said that police have no fair guarantee of promotion, and it undermines the morale, it undermines the integrity of the entire police service. But government made that promise in March 2024. Now, I believe that the government is going to Parliament next Friday to amend the Police Act. It will be a simple amendment to create this new rank of senior constable. As you know, there used to be the rank of constable and then corporal and then sergeant. Corporal was removed, and we suspect that the government feels that this is some interim measure to create a new rank. But the police officers are not satisfied with this senior constable thing, but accept that they'll accept it because it marks an increase in salary and it marks some kind of promotion. But 14 months later, the government did not do it, has not done it. They seized the opportunity of the St. James by-election after we raised it on the platform, and they promised the police officers that they would have this new rank created by May. May has come and gone, they've not done it. June, not done it. July, not done it. August, and it's going to be a simple amendment, which means that somebody has been lazy. Over 14 months, somebody has found it impossible to do a simple amendment, and this is reminiscent of when they sent a letter to a gentleman and told him that he was Deputy Commissioner of Police, not knowing that you had to amend the Police Act. So here again, they have taken now, next Friday, I think they're going to do it. I hope they're going to do it in Parliament. They are going there to amend the Police Act to create this senior constable position and to increase the pay of these senior constables. Now, we support the police service, and we understand this week that there was something of a limited sick out. We're going to appeal to the police officers to go back to work. I know, and we know that there is some discontent. We know that there's fallen morale within the police service, but we are begging the police to support the citizens of this country at a difficult time and to go back to work, all of you. We know that you cannot be happy with this government. The entire citizenry is not happy with the government. But for the sake of peace and order within Barbados, we are appealing to the police service to go back to work. From the commissioner down to the most junior constable, you have the support of this party, and we are asking you in turn to continue your good work in supporting the good people of this country. We want to address a matter that is occurring within the police service. It's very disturbing, and this again gives justification to discontent within the police service. Now, the government refused to promote those persons to the rank of senior constable, but here's the same government in a context in which the police officers have been agitating for better pay. The government the government chose to give certain police officers, and that is to say, plainclothes police officers, an increase of $1,900 a month. Now, that has created discontent within the police service. It has driven a wedge between police officers. I mean, it's one service and they ought to be united. But here it is, the government, by its practice of divide and rule, has chosen to give this $1,900 a month extra to officers in plain clothes. And that is not good. That is not right. And what is happening, well, we know this, that when a crime takes place, the first responders are the uniformed persons. The plainclothes detectives come in after to do the investigative work. But here, you've had police officers who have always worked together, uniform and plainclothes. But here's the government cleverly deciding that they're going to divide and rule, and they're going to create this special section. Now, there's danger in that. We know of the situation in Grenada with the Mongoose gang years ago. We're old enough to know about that. And there's a danger that the government may be on the cusp of creating a service within a service, and that there are persons in uniform who want to take advantage of this additional money being paid, and they're trying to become plainclothes persons, whether they're equipped to do it or not. They're trying to do it. But what is more sinister is that we understand that the government is interfering in the workings of the Barbados Police Service, and that the government may itself be attempting to determine which police officers now become plainclothes police officers. We spoke of the emergence of the Mongoose guy in Grenada. We will reject this initiative. We want all police officers to be equally paid, and we are asking the government to withdraw itself from interference and control of the Barbados Police Service. This party supports the Barbados Police Service. This party supports the Commissioner and the High Command of the Barbados Police Service. This party supports every officer down to the most junior rank of constable, and this party rejects this government's interference within the police service by the process of divide and rule. So we are asking the government to reverse itself from that interference. We've quoted Section 8 of the Police Act several times, and we've come here today to quote it again, that the Commissioner of Police is responsible to the head of state, the Governor General, the President, I beg your pardon. And the Commissioner of Police is not responsible to the Prime Minister nor to the Attorney General. Government, please leave the internal workings of the Barbados Police Service to the High Command, the Commissioner, and the High Command. And I'm going to say this, that this party supports the High Command of the Police Service, including the Commissioner. We must do it for the sake of peace and order in this country. This government continues to undermine the Barbados Police Service, and we are asking them to let the service remain united. That if you're going to give an allowance to any member, give it to you give it to all. Do not select a certain group. Give them this $1,900 allowance and leave the others at financial disadvantage. And furthermore, keep out of the workings of the police service and stop attempting to influence the high command of the police service in determining or in deciding which police officers shall become plainclothes. That is a level of interference that is probably unprecedented and frightening, unprecedented in this country. I moved from the police service to the customs department. The customs department, as you know, is the department that deals with the entry of goods into this country, and goods include contraband. The citizens of this country are deeply concerned as to how we have so many guns in this country. I mean, 2 AK-47s this week may well be the tip of the iceberg. We don't know. But the chaps seem quite well equipped that they can run through any neighborhood now. Scarborough, right opposite a police station, fire off several bullets. And they seem unconcerned that there may be any shortage of ammunition or guns. Clearly, the evidence would seem to suggest that there's no shortage of guns nor ammunition in this country. And therefore, the focus goes to customs, those who are responsible for border control. Just as the police service has been disrespected by the government, we are saying to the people of Barbados that the Customs Department has also been disrespected and undermined by the government. Here's why we say this. For 6 years, there has been no clothing allowance given to the Customs Department. The government continues to neglect that department, or rather to neglect divisions of that department. Now, when the government came into office, there were several customs officers sent home. Sent home. How has the government replaced those customs officers? Well, as they have been doing in manipulating the police service, and I say this, they've been manipulating the police service. We have information that this government has been actively and directly involved in the selection of customs officers. But beyond that, beyond the selection of customs officers, there's something that is happening in the Barbados Customs Service, and there's something that has happened. I spoke of the context in which a government has sent home several customs officers, undermining the work of an important department. Now, this coincides with several firearms, and ammunition coming into this country. We're not blaming customs officers, but we feel that it is incumbent upon us as a party to give the fullest context as to what is happening in Barbados. They sent home several customs officers. What has the government done? Barbadians, the government has hired a consultant in customs. And I understand that that consultant, now there's a control of customs, but the government has hired a consultant. And this may shock you, but we are going to ask the government to confirm whether that consultant in customs, who by the way is not a Barbadian, and it is very interesting that you bring a non-Barbadian into customs to advise the government as to the flow of goods into this country. I'm not reflecting on what he is doing or the nature of what he is doing. I'm just asking the government if the government is paying him $2,000 per hour. As a consultant, I'm asking the government that. Let the government come out and answer the question as to whether there's in spite of the fact that we have a controller and we have over 300 customs officers in this country, is there now present in this country a consultant in customs who is receiving $2,000 per hour? They will answer the question. If it is less, they'll say less. If it is more, they'll say no. They'll say that it is more. But I don't think they can challenge us in our assertion that there is a consultant in the Customs Department. We don't know what he does. We don't know precisely what he does. But what we do know is that last Tuesday, when the iSCUDA system was closed for an entire day, that government lost its revenue for that entire day between 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. And those are the inefficiencies that visit this department while you have this high-paid consultant. Again, we ask the question, is that consultant receiving $2,000 per hour? And is that consultant bypassing the control of customs and reporting directly to Bay Street? We all know who we mean by Bay Street. So those are the questions we ask in relation to two very important departments. We've come here this morning to launch this excellent report from our Crime Commission, and the two state agencies which play a critical role in matters of crime, obviously, is the police service and the Customs Department. Government has continued to disrespect and to undermine the morale of those departments. Government has continued to interfere directly in both departments. And then the public will not be surprised that crime is the way it is in Barbados, because these two important agencies of state have now become subject to the control and the influence of government. We've asked this government to pass a new Republican constitution so that power and responsibility is properly defined under the Constitution, so that you will have a police service in which it is clear that it is insulated from the control of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. They have refused to do that. That is the importance of having a new constitution, so that in this constitutional lacuna, it means that the Prime Minister has given unto herself unlimited power. That is what is happening in Barbados, so that when we ask for the passing of a new constitution, we're not speaking formalities, we're not speaking legal technicalities. We are talking about political power and the distribution of political power and the lack of definition as to who has power in this country, and the fact that the police service, the power of the police service has been undermined, not only by a government that is on its own trajectory of terror, but the lack of a constitution means that power and responsibility remains ill-defined in this country. So again, we're asking for that new constitution. They've had 4 years. They're walking around telling the people of this world that we have been a republic for 4 years. And in that space of time, no constitution. And I say it again, we have a Republican constitution only to the extent that the head of state is local. Apart from that, we are still functioning under the traditions of a Westminster constitution. So here it is. We are the only country in the world that has a Republican constitution in form, but a Westminster constitution in substance. And that is where we are. It is not a mere formality. It is about power. It is about the abuse of power. It is about the abuse of power evidence in government's relationship with the police service. It is about the abuse of power now evidence in government's relationship with the Customs Department. Both these agencies of state are being undermined by the government. We've asked the government those questions. We expect answers very, very shortly. People of this country expect answers very shortly. Again, I want to thank you, Verla, and the commissioners for this excellent report. This is my weekend here. This is my weekend. So thanks again to you, Verla, and to all the commissioners. And thanks to the media for having attended on this Emancipation Day. And we say to Barbadians, happy Emancipation Day. Thank you very much.
Yes, I have one question as opposed to announcing Nation News. So Mr. Pisa, your report, you would have made linkages between economy and crime. And looking at, certain projects that have been approved and are still on the way, which is the Fraxton Bank in Jamis Lane. You have the Pier Head. In your report, is there a note to how these drastic changes to the cityscape, which is a sense of gentrification, how that goes to also influence the matter of crime in the country?
Okay, so as I said, we're not finished our work. There is an element that speaks to the exclusion of our citizens from participating in an economy and how that impacts on them. That entire exercise from Bridgetown straight through to, I dare say, Hastings and Worthing, because I am noting the changes along our coast. And then as we head west, stretching all the way down to Six Men's, has the potential to exclude ordinary Barbadians. And it has the potential, and this matters very much to Barbadians, to exclude them not only from economic participation, but from enjoyment of our beaches. And we want to have an in-depth conversation where that is concerned. So whilst it is mentioned, it is mentioned more in terms of the failure of the government to create space for more Barbadians to participate in the economy in some meaningful way. And we speak to methods of doing that in the solutions that we give. For instance, there is mention of better use of the I beg your pardon. There's mention of better use of the Cultural Industries Development Act. There is mention of a better building out of our renewable energy so that there is space for ordinary Barbadians. For instance, I'm remembering being very young at the time, but paying attention and I will admit being fairly political aware from an early age because of my family's involvement in politics. When the emerging technology was solar panels for water heating, there was government-led initiative to ensure that even the smallest chattel house had the opportunity to have a panel on the roof. What it meant was that there was a build out in terms of technicians, in terms of the fabricators, the installers, those who were able to repair. And we saw that there was room for greater participation. Matter of fact, there were persons from Barbados who took that technology past the region and into Africa. So there was that development of the industry in a way that allowed ordinary Barbadians to participate. And we are not seeing the same level of involvement being forced by government. And I use force in a positive way, if you can imagine that there's this push to allow ordinary Barbadians to participate. What we are seeing is that first of all, the cost of panels in terms of electricity is prohibitive for the average Barbadian. It has not translated in a way that is meaningful, even at the level of the provisioning by the monopoly that exists, that you could see benefit rolling down towards average Barbadians. So in that way, it is addressed in the report. But you are correct that it is a larger topic, is one of those build outs that can happen coming out of the report, because you will find, if I am sure, and this is just my thinking given how we were relating to people on the street, that they are noting these changes with alarm. And there are changes that are being made that not just gentrification, but the visual effect of Bridgetown and its historic garrison is changing. We're not that we're in praise of our colonial era, but it is a fact. And it is a life part of our heritage to the point where it was recognized by UNESCO.
Correct.
And has currency for our one industry, really, tourism, which is another feature that is mentioned in terms of how we make these fundamental changes, is that we have to have we keep talking about having other revenue streams, and what we really mean by that, other than a nebulous concept, is that we allow more to participate. What we're seeing is that we build out a medical marijuana industry, and I do recall the Prime Minister saying that because of my stance on medical marijuana, that I would not be in a position to critique, and I had to correct her on that, because all that has happened in the manner in which they have done it is that the same 1% who already play in the economy get the opportunity to play in that. And we're seeing that also in terms of our renewable energy drive, that the same players are coming forward every time. And it is not that we are having a spread in the economy. I read with interest and a fuzzy eyebrow just this morning an article in the newspaper that was suggesting that white Barbadians are now disadvantaged. I was so confused. Okay, and the optics of having an all-black government suggests that. But the reality on the street for the average Barbadian is something completely different. And it would be a total disassociation from reality if we buy into that argument. And that translates into the very scenario that you pose. It just has all of these different, I was going to say branches, but it's more like tentacles, because it's actually wrapping around our society and strangling it in a way that actually is giving more reason to opt out of society. And that is a concept that is repeated in this report, that opting out, it is incumbent upon us who are looking for leadership to be bringing more people back into the fold. I didn't have the opportunity in my opening remarks to speak to the rehabilitative aspect of society, okay, of society, because societal norms have to change in order to accept that we need to bring certain persons back into the fold, including those who have collided with the criminal justice system at some point in time, you know. So there's so much that has to be done to make sure that we are making room for more players, as opposed to making space for the same people to play a different game. All right. And that really is what we are experiencing in Barbados. And because we are more than an economy, it is having an adverse effect on our society.
Tanisha, you'll start from network. The first question to go to Mr. Thorne. Guns and ammunition are coming to the island. As you said, there's no shortage. Do you believe that workers and immigration authorities and customs officers at the airport should be required to take mandatory manufacturing tests? And my second question is to Mr. Visa.